I know very few leaders who love conflict and having tough conversations. For me, it's a part of my job that I dread the most. To this day, 18 years into being a leader, I still get nervous before having a difficult conversation. The easy thing to do is avoid the conversation altogether, but that is not what a good leader does. Having the courage to hold tough conversations is essential to maintaining a healthy work culture. Having tough conversations does not mean that you have to be aggressive and cold. Effective conversations are actually just the opposite. Having empathy and assertiveness is the key to a successful conversation. So today I want to share with you what I personally do to prepare for a difficult and more formal conversation. There are other times tough conversations need to be held, but the conversations are more casual. The tips today are specific to conversations where documentation may follow. So if you're like me and tough conversations don't come naturally, you want to listen to this entire video. So once you have determined that having a tough conversation is needed, you need to do the following. First, be clear on the concern that needs to be addressed. There may be several issues, but try your best to narrow it down to one. If you must address more, keep it to no more than 3. After that, it becomes a laundry list, and if you have that many concerns to address, you have waited way too long to have the conversation. Many times, the most recent incident works best. When bringing the concern to the attention of the employee, be explicit. Avoid making general statements such as, "Recently I've noticed you've lost your cool on people." Your conversation will be more productive and have a better outcome when you can identify specific incidents. This takes the judgment out of it. It's hard for people to argue when they are presented with facts. Next, prepare for the meeting itself. I like to make notes or bullet points on what I want to say. For very difficult conversations, I actually script it out. You want your message to be clear and concise. Before meeting with someone I know can be particularly difficult, I practice a conversation with my assistant principal. When practicing, I ask her to come back at me with things that the person may say. This helps me to think through how I would respond and helps me identify possible scenarios that I may not have considered. Practicing may seem weird, but I promise it is effective. I would never read my notes when talking, but having a few bulleted talking points is acceptable. So when you start the meeting, do not beat around the bush. Don't insult the person by starting with something positive just so you can say something negative. I do not agree with the sandwich method. I believe in being upfront and honest. This does not mean that you have to start the conversation off with a bang, going straight to the issue, but do be honest about why they are there. I also avoid asking how they're doing at the beginning of the meeting because this has not worked out well for me in the past. It can derail your conversation before it even begins. I usually start off like this. "Thank you, Ms. Jones, for meeting with me today. I know meetings like this are not enjoyable, but there are a few things we need to discuss." Or, "Thank you, Ms. Jones, for meeting with me today. You may be wondering why the meeting was called. We're meeting today to discuss a few concerns that have been brought to my attention." The starter depends on if they know why they're meeting with you or not. My personal preference is to give the employee a heads up on the invite to what we will be meeting about. Not the specific issue, but rather a general statement. Something like parent concern, incident this morning, or follow-up from the team meeting last week. Again, my philosophy is to be upfront and honest. That is how I would want to be treated, so that is how I treat those I lead. You will have employees that will immediately come to your office and want to meet right now. And I highly recommend that you do not meet at their demand because you want to make sure that you're prepared. Although I already know the employees that will do that, so I anticipate their urgency to meet. I will send those invites very close to the meeting day and time, but I will also make sure that I'm prepared and have my schedule clear to meet sooner. It's not a power struggle to meet when you want to meet. The focus should be on the issue that needs to be addressed. Now, there have been times when employees demand to meet sooner, and I tell them that we will meet at the day and time that they were given. It really just depends on the person and the situation. Now that you've greeted the person, it's time to get down to business. Clearly state the concern. Support your concern with examples with dates and times. For example, today we're meeting to discuss your unprofessional communication with a coworker. Last Monday during our team meeting, you yelled at Barbara for making a mistake on the project. You continue to share your concerns, and if the person attempts to interrupt you, you can say, You will have time to respond. Please allow me to finish. And if it's a person that you know will argue, set the expectation at the beginning of the meeting. Today, I'm going to share some concerns. Please do not interrupt me when I'm sharing, and I will not interrupt you when you are responding. Can you agree to that? After sharing your concerns, allow time for the employee to respond. Depending on their response, you may need to ask follow-up questions. Make sure your questions are direct and not open-ended. You want the response to be specific to the question that you asked, not a long, drawn-out response to why she was upset with Barbara in the first place. If legitimate concerns are shared that need to be addressed with the other person, you could say, "Thank you for letting me know. I will follow up with that." If the employee tries to shift the blame to you or brings up irrelevant things, bring the conversation back to the issue. The tables can turn fast when people are upset. You could say, "Today we are talking about what you said to Barbara." After they have had a chance to respond, recap what the employee shared to ensure you are capturing the conversation correctly. Or follow up with a question such as, "Ms. Jones, have you thought of ways you could have better handled that situation?" Correctly capturing the response is especially important if a memo needs to be given because of the incident. You then need to give some sort of directive, action step, or expectation. This is also a good time to refer to the employee handbook or policies. For example, on May 12, 2024, you signed that you understood and would comply with the standards for professional communication. The standards are listed on page 14. You could follow up with, "Ms. Jones, do you agree that yelling at Barbara in front of her peers does not meet our standards listed in our handbook?" If the incident will result in a memo, I like to be upfront and state that as well in the meeting. I don't want there to be any surprises. After giving the directive, action step, or expectation, you need to shift the conversation. This is especially critical if it's a good employee who made a poor decision. You could say, "Ms. Jones, you have been one of my top team leads for the past 3 years. I have seen you do amazing things with your team. I know the conversation today was not enjoyable, but I truly want what is best for you and your team. Is there anything I can do to better support you?" There are other authentic ways to end the meeting. The important thing is to end the meeting in a way that lets a little bit of tension out of the room. It could be following up on a project or asking questions about an upcoming meeting. Shift the conversation in some manner. I also pre-plan this part if I think the meeting may not end well. Whatever you do, don't give fake praise and accolades. People know when you're not being authentic. The goal is to maintain a healthy relationship with the employee. Maintaining empathy for the person throughout this process is also key. I hope you have found value in the tips today and can put some of them into practice. There will never be a one-size-fits-all script to follow, and many times conversations do not go as planned. This is why I over-prepare. I'd rather be prepared and the conversation go perfect than to not prepare and it ends in disaster. If you would like more videos on the topic of tough conversations, let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining Great to Lead. If you found value in the content, please like the video and subscribe to the page. Until next week, strive to be a leader who inspires and leads with greatness.